Welcome to the Wargaming Garage and this 2000 point GT Nephilim mission data Scry-Salvage. Whilst I'm preparing for a tournament early next year, I know it's a little way off, but I thought we'd do a few tryouts of a Death Guard list that I'm looking to put together, and I'm working my way through some of all of the GT Nephilim missions. I had a tryout the other night against a good friend of mine, which went pretty well, and the list sort of hold up quite well, but I thought I would do a report for the next mission up, which is data Scry-Salvage that I rolled off for. The aim being over a number of reports like this, which is a bit of a dispatch or a sort of tangent from the narrative ones that we normally do on the channel, but I thought it'd be good to record some of the progress being made around the GT missions, and just to see the little tweaks and whatnot to the Death Guard list that we've put together. So I thought it'd be good to record it and see how that progress goes. So I've laid the table out with a view to everything obviously being essentially a mirrored layout, mirrored table setup with line of sight blocking and some ruins, some difficult ground, and this is a 6 objective mission with a hold 2, hold 3. So it's going to be a challenge for the Death Guard, I think, today. So we'll see how they fare in that one, because but I've got a plan of action, I think, to sort of work on the primaries in a particular way. And just a little bit about the table today. The mat itself is a gamemat.eu mat. The rest of the terrain is pretty much GW stuff, with things like the little barrels and crates being gamemat.eu as well, from their Chemzone 2 range. So there'll be links in the description below to some of that stuff, but and then the objective markers are just a bit of an eBay or an Etsy job, I think. I can't remember now. So that's the table layout. So here is 2000 points of Death Guard. I'm running a different play company today. I'm going to try out the Ferryman. I normally run with the Inexorable, but I thought I'd go with the Ferryman today and try some of that out. They're led today by the Lord of Contagion, Captain Trips, for those who watch some of the narrative stuff. But anyway, he's the Lord of Contagion, and today he has Unstable Sickness as a pathogen upgrade. He then has the droning, which is while an enemy unit's in contagion range, it will halve the movement characteristic until the end of the phase. He's also got the Man Reaper and the Orb of Desiccation, so he's got a little bit about him in terms of a once per battle weapon, but also when he does get into combat, he's dishing out mortal wounds for every model that is slain to a maximum of 3. So he's hopefully, if we get him into combat, he should take care of some of the business. He's backed up today with the Malignant Plaguecaster. Again, has had the upgrade for the Putrid Periapt, so he knows 3 powers, which is Curse of the Leper, Miasma of Pestilence, and Putrescent Vitality. So a couple of buffs, and then in his back pocket he's got that attacking one. In addition, we have the Tallyman, so we can farm for some CP and also to save CP by giving a unit a +1 to hit. The other elite is the Foul Blightspawn. It's one of those don't leave home without them kind of models. And again, so he's had a CP spent to give him a Warlord trait, which is Arch Contaminator. He's also got the relic, giving him the 6-inch aura of enemy models not counting as charging. But then he's also got the Viscous Death pathogen, so he can re-roll the number of shots with his weapon. So all in all, characters doing what characters ought to do, which is buff everything around them. In the troop slots, we've got 2 units of Poxwalkers. So hopefully I use those to hold the back lines. We've then got 3 squads of Plague Marines. This one's a relatively shooty squad. This one's also a relatively shooty squad. And this one is the melee squad with a flail and a cleaver, an axe and a mace and so on. And there is a little bit of shooting in there with a plasma gun as well. So a little bit of that, but mainly there for melee. In the elite slots, we've got a squad of Blightlord Terminators. And we've also got a squad of Death Shroud Terminators, but I have actually got these 2 as proxy Death Shroud today. I want to try and run 5. I do have another box of Death Shroud on the way, but whilst I wait for those to turn up, from Willing Games, check them out in the link below. I thought I'd just proxy these 2 in just to see what a squad of 5 looks like. Fast attack wise, I've got a squad of 2 Mephitic Blight Haulers, and I have a drone. Again, this drone for today is running the Plague Spewers. I do try and run everything WYSIWYG. I know I could put the Flesh Mower on it and no one would really bat an eyelid, but when the new drone turns up, that's what I will be doing, is putting a Flesh Mower on him. And then I also have a Rhino and a Plague Burst Crawler to complete the set. So that's 2,000 points of Death Guard. Let's go and see what the sisters are bringing today. So here are 2,000 points of Sisters of Battle, and I'm running them again as Argent Shroud today. So leading the fight is a Canoness with a Condemner Bolt Gun and a Power Sword. She has a relic, the Quicksilver Veil, so that adds 3-inch to her movement characteristic. She's -1 to the hit roll, and she gets she always fights first in the fight phase. She's also got an upgrade for, she's got the Rapturous Blows, so she gets +1 strength and damage characteristics of all her melee weapons, and the miraculous ability once per battle is that a core unit or character within miracle range, every time an unmodified 6 to wound is rolled, it does a mortal wound in addition. So if we pop that at the right time, it's got the ability to dish out a lot of mortal wounds if we can snarl up the right unit with 2 or 3 units of the sisters. So she's also got the sort of the usual reroll ones to hit. She's backed up with the Palatine, running a plasma pistol. I've given her the Warlord trait Indomitable Belief, so she adds 1 to the Shield of Faith roll for units within 6. And she's also got a blessing as well, which is the Emperor's Grace. So if she is wounded, she can heal D3 wounds per turn, and once her miraculous ability gets off, she basically denies all the re-rolls of hit rolls, wounds or damage rolls against friendly core units within miraculous ability range. Troops wise, 3 squads are Battle Sisters. They are what you see is what you get, much like the Death Guard. The front squad has got the Superior's got a Combi Flamer, and the special weapons a Melter Gun with an Artificer Stormbolter. In the second squad it's a Flamer and a Heavy Flamer. In the third squad it's a Stormbolter and a Flamer. In the elite slots we've got an Imagifier who has had a couple of upgrades as well. So she knows 2 tails. She's got the Tail of the Faithful, meaning that we can reroll advances and charges. And we've also got Tail of the Warrior, which is giving +1 strength to core units within range. We've then got a squad of 10 Sacrosancts, giving that bodyguard, giving that protection to the characters. We've then got a squad of 8 Repentia, doing what Repentia do, and they're led by a Repentia Superior, and supporting that will be a Preacher, in order to try and give them a +1 attack and to give them +1 to wound. So again, if we get them in the right kind of area against the right target, hopefully should do some damage there. In the fast attack slots and the heavy support slots, we've got a squad of Retributors, this one with 2 Multi-Melters and 2 Heavy Flamers, again with 2 Cherubs. And then the second squad is 2 Melters and a Heavy Bolter and a Flamer, again with 2 Cherubs. We've got 2 Immolators, one with a Multi-Melter and one with the Heavy Flamers. And then we have an Exorcist tank and a Rhino. We've also, in fast attack, we've got the squad of Seraphim, so we can hopefully do some deep strike and some work on that one. Then we have a second detachment with a Canoness and 3 Penitent Engines, so we've got a Spearhead detachment being run there. So again, with Argent Shroud, with the ability to advance and shoot without penalty, re-roll either a hit roll or a wound roll for each unit, I'm hoping that that's enough to do damage at range before the Death Guard get up too close and start their contagion ability to reduce the toughness of these units down. So we'll see how we get on. Obviously we're up against, sisters wise, we're up against a army that has essentially everything as OBSEC, barring the characters and the vehicles, in an army here where I've got limited OBSEC in terms of what I can put there. So it's going to be an interesting matchup. Will the speed of the Argent Shroud be counteract the inexorable advance of the Death Guard as they go across the battle grid? So we'll go off to deployment and we'll see who gets first turn. So after deployment, the sisters chose this end during the roll-off stage, and the Death Guard had this end. And as you can see, we've had a bolt of the vehicles deploy down towards the left-hand flank. Then we've castled up with the characters behind this obscuring terrain here. So all that remains now, a very similar setup, sort of a mirror, if you like, around for the sisters. A lot of the characters and the Sacrosancts are here. The Retributors are already in the Immolators, and the Repentia squad and the Priest and the Superior are also in the Rhino. So secondaries wise, basically The sisters have taken 3 out of the 4 from the Nephilim pack, and the Death Guard have also taken everything out of the Nephilim pack in terms of the Death Guard specific ones and the sister specific ones. Seem to make sense. I think with things like fleeing vectors, with the number of models in these Battle Sister squads, I think we can get some points there. Spread the sickness, a bit of an obvious one, I think, across these 6 objectives, considering it's you don't have to stay on the objective, you can move off of it, so it did make sense. And then with the sisters, we took the Sacred Ground, I basically one I didn't take was Slay the Heretic one. I didn't think I'd be able to get that very well, so yeah, I think obviously I'm looking to try and test out this Death Guard list. I will play both sides equally. I will give every single bit of consideration to what they're doing from the mission perspective. Both sides, whether it's sisters or whether it's Death Guard, I think the most sensible thing I can aim for is to try and get 8 points on primaries a turn. That's going to be my aim. If I can average 8 points on primaries a turn, then I'll be a happy player. Then really it boils down to how well those secondaries perform, because I think obviously I can boost those primaries with the mission, with the second part of the primary mission. So yeah, I think that's a relatively decent thing to aim to do. If I can hold 2, fine. There's 6 objectives to hold. I think if I can hold my home objective and hold one in no man's land, then, or possibly even 2 in no man's land, fine. But I think I need to aim for just holding and getting 8 points on the primary for 4 turns. I think that will suffice. So nothing else to say apart from rolling off. So the red dice will be the Death Guard and the white dice will be the sisters. So let's see who goes first. It's the sisters with turn 1. At the end of the movement phase, the sisters have really pushed out into the mid board. The start of the turn, they rolled a 5 for the miracle dice, and the Tallyman also managed to get an extra CP for the Death Guard. So both start at the start of this turn, they're both on 2. One more point to note is pre-game, the sisters have to designate a objective as a shrine marker. So that's this one here over in the corner, that we must hold by the end of the game. So, yeah, movement is, the sisters have drawn themselves out well into the mid-board. We've advanced with the Rhino, we've advanced with the Immolators, we've advanced with the Penitent Engines over at the top there, because we can obviously, as Argent Shroud, we can advance and count as if we're stationary. So that's what we're going to do. And so There's not going to be that much shooting for the sisters this turn, because of some of the sort of targets that they're able to see. But with that being said, we'll move on to the shooting phase. So we're going to start with this immolator here, firing everything into the Death Shroud. We want to try and whittle away that bodyguard ability and see if we can get to the characters beneath. So we'll start with a heavy bolter. And I get to re-roll one hit, but I think I'm going to save that. And no wounds. Okay, so now we'll go on to the heavy multi-melters. Yeah. Okay. Both wound. One passes, one fails for D6. Okay, so that kills one Death Shroud. The bolter fire from this second immolator came in but didn't do any wounds at all. So now we'll move on to the Exorcist missile launcher. We're going to go into that squad of Terminators just on the edge of those ruins there. So again, we'll start with the heavy bolters. And nothing doing. So we go for 3d3 Exorcist missiles for 5. So hitting on 3s. Wounding on 3s. Oh, it's about timing that re-roll, isn't it? So I'll take it on the flail guy at the back because he is in the ruins. So -2 becomes -1, becomes nothing because of the +1 to his cover save. So 2 ups. And they're absolutely fine. Okay. So with that, we can go on to the charge phase. The only thing I'm going to try is a couple of cheeky charges from these guys here. But I'm also not too fussed if I fail them. It's a 10-inch charge from here to here, an 11-inch charge from the rear one into the Mephitic Blight Haulers. But anything I can do to try and tie something up or make it fall back or something will be advantageous, especially against the slow-moving Death Guard. So we'll start with one into the Terminators. Nope. And we'll the one into the Blight Hauler. Nope. Okay. And so with that marks the end of the first turn for the sisters. They're within range of that objective over there, so they'll score that for the shrine. And then we should also score on the primary because this squad here are doing the mission action for the data retrieval. So we'll have held 1, held 2 and held 3. So not a bad start for the sisters, but let's see what the Death Guard do in retaliation. During the Death Guard command phase, the Tallyman successfully gained an additional CP and put his +1 to hit onto the Death Shroud, which were right by him. So they're semi-beefed up. And then we've started to move out. This squad of Plague Marines here will be doing the data intercept action, and this squad of Poxwalkers will be doing the spread the sickness action. In order to sort of try and gain those points at the end of the turn. So we've moved everything out. The only thing to advance really was that squad of Poxwalkers into the corner to get onto the objective, ready for the following turn, because we reckon there's a Death Guard player. There's a fair amount in the way before anything can get to these Poxwalkers. So they're ready for the next turn, and they'll be ready to then spread the sickness onto this objective and keep on trying to score those secondary points. Round here, the Death Shroud just started moving forward, getting themselves, if they can avoid the crater, getting themselves into some kind of charge range for the Immolator, and same with the Bloat Drone in order to shut that Immolator down and force it into either a fallback or negate its shooting whatsoever. So that's movement complete, so we'll head on to the Psychic phase. So for the Psychic phase, the playcaster is going to make the Terminator's -1 to hit, and he's going to put a smite into the Penitent Engine. So we'll start with the smite, which just goes off for 2 wounds. So I'll mark that there. And Miasma Pestilence, which doesn't go off. Do I want to spend a CP to re-roll that? Is it that important, the -1 to hit? No. So, starting with the Foul Blightspawn, he's going to put everything into this Immolator, and because he's got the Viscous Death Relic, it gives him a Strength 8, so he'll be wounding on 3s rather than 4s, which is good. So we'll start off with a number of shots, and we won't be re-rolling that one. So winning on 3s, re-rolling 1s, and there's no 1s to re-roll. Okay. So -3 becomes -2, so 5 ups. And make 1 and take 6 damage. So we'll carry that on with the Bloat Drone, will go into that Immolator as well. So re-roll for number of shots. For 6. It's a Strength 6, Toughness 7, so we're not in contagion range yet, so it's 5s to wound. Oof, we'll re-roll those 1s. -1 becomes -0, so 3 ups. It takes 2 more wounds. Okay. So a seriously bracketed Immolator, but it's still around. Still got the Retributors inside, but it's still around. So we'll move our way around to the squad of Terminators here, firing into... no, we're going to fire into the Rhino, and then we're going to look to charge the Penitent Engine. So the combi bolters fired out, managed to whittle a couple of wounds away. But as you can hear in the background, or possibly hear in the background, the neighbours are firing up their own chainswords. I don't know what quite is going on outside, but I'm going to stay in here. So we'll head on to the Reaper autocannons into the Rhino. So hitting on 3s, hitting on 4s because they moved. Okay. Wounding on 3s and nothing. Apologies, it would have been hitting on 3s, but they rolled 2 2s anyway, so it didn't make much difference. So now we'll come round to the Blight Haulers, and we're going to fire. We're going to fire everything into this Penitent Engine, because what I want to try and do is slingshot these Terminators around here on a charge, and then take this objective from the Sisters of Battle. So everything from these Blight Haulers will go into the Penitent Engine. So we'll start with the multi-mounters. 2 hits. And 1 wound. He does not get a save, so we'll do the D6 damage for 5. Does the Penitent Engine shrug any of those on the 5 up? Feel no pain. Oh, shrugs one of them, leaving him on 1 wound remaining. So 2 crack missiles. 1 hit, 1 misses. 3s to wound, doesn't wound. Okay. So we rolled for the Havoc missile launcher coming in from the Rhino, and it rolled a 6 for the number of shots. So we're going to go for it. So hitting on 3s, that is not bad. Possibly the first time the Havoc launcher will do anything. Strength 5, toughness 5, so 4s to wound. That isn't bad. So 4 up saves. Fails them all, and that is a dead penitent engine. So the last thing to fire was this squad of Plague Marines. We fired into the Rhino and try and whittle it down some more. The bolt of fire was incidental and did nothing at all, but the Blight launcher managed to take 2 wounds off of it, leaving it with 6. So with all the shooting pretty much done, it's time to head on to some charges. So looking at charges for the Death Guard, I think what we're looking to do, with only 6 wounds left on that Rhino, I think it's possible with some work by this Plague Marine squad to crack that open and get to what's inside. The Death Shroud will probably charge into this this Immolator to finish off those 3 wounds, or I may just decide to tie it up in combat and bring the Bloat Drone in. I think I'll probably do the Bloat Drone first to tie it up, and then I will charge the Death Shroud, because then either it's tied up or the Death Shroud are in, and it's not long for this world. Around this side, the Terminators are going to charge into the Penitent Engine with a 5-inch charge. So that, I think, will do it. So if we start with the Bloat Drone into the Immolator, that's in with a 10. The Terminators into the Penitent Engine, they fail. I'm not going to use a CP on that because I want to save a CP for the Death Shroud. The 5-inch charge, 4-inch charge for the Plague Marines, they're in, and the Death Shroud. Let's see how they get on. Okay, they fail that, so I'll spend a CP to re-roll, and they still fail. Okay. So we'll start with the Bloat Drone. He does get 4 attacks, hitting on 3s. And they all hit. It's now Strength 6 versus Toughness 6 because of Contagion. So 4s to wound, re-rolling 1s. And it is a full house. So -2 becomes -1 because of Armour and Contempt. So 4 ups. Must pass a couple of these, I think. Okay, takes 2 more wounds, is down to 1 wound remaining. Okay, so a couple of CP spent on this Plague Marine squad here. 1 for Trench Fighters, giving them an extra attack, and 1 for Creeping Blight. So only 6s to wound are -4, triggering the Shield of Fate ability for the Sisters. So, large number of attacks here, hitting on 3s. So Strength 4, Toughness 6 because of Contagion, so 5s to wound, but any 6s are straight through, and any 1s are re-rolled. Re-rolling the 1s. So 1 5 up, which is a 3 up save, which fails, so 5 wounds remaining, and so now 5 Shield of Faith rolls. Oh, make 2, so he's got 2, that Rhino has 2 wounds remaining. So we fought back off camera for the Rhino and the Immolator, and nothing doing. So that marks the end of the Death Guard turn. So they really have advanced into the Sisters' lines, and they are going to start causing problems because now we have an OBSEC unit on this objective here, we are now contesting this objective around here, and obviously the Death Guard are holding this objective here. So for the sisters into their command phase, that's really made a big dent, I think, for turn 2. So that marks the end of turn 1 and battle round 1 for the Death Guard. So I'll mark the points up and you should see them coming across the screen any moment. So with that, let's see what the sisters can do in battle round 2. So during the command phase we gained a CP for the sisters and we rolled a 3 for a miracle dice. The tallyman also rolled and got an additional CP for the Death Guard, so they're back up to 3, and that was that for the command phase. During the movement phase, quite a lot's happened. The immolators, the retributors disembarked and then moved, and the immolator then fell back. The sisters have come through the ruins here and there, doing the sacred ground action. This Troll Retributor stayed in the immolator for now, and then everything else, as in terms of the HQ castles, moved forward. And these sisters have advanced, and they've had a couple of CP spent on them for Defenders of the Faith. So now they count as double the amount of shots, and they basically have transhuman. The Repentia disembarked, and the Rhino fell back out of combat as well. So with all that being said, we'll move on to the shooting phase. So we'll start the shooting phase over with the Retributors here, and we're going to split fire because rumour is it always works. The multi-melters are going to go into the Death Shroud, again whittling that down because they are a particular threat once they get in the lines. Then the heavy flamers are going to go into the bloat drone. So we'll start with the 2 melters. And that is not very good. We will use the Argent Shroud reroll, and that goes through. So 3s to wound. Okay. But it's not saved. Let's be super annoying. And now it is saved. I spent a CP from the Death Guard pool. So now the heavy flamers. Okay, so heavy flamers for 7. So strength 6, toughness 7, so 5s to wound. Not bad. So -1 becomes -nothing. And the drone is absolutely fine. So I'm going to spend one of the cherubs on one of the multi-melters. Be rude not to. And then both hit. He's going into the Death Shroud. And both wound. I thought we were on for 2 for 2 there, but 1 fails. So I am going to not risk it. I'm going to spend one of the miracle dice. So I'm spending one of the 5s, which then kills another Death Shroud. So to speed things up a little bit, we are going to rinse and repeat with the Penitent Engine and this immolator into that bloat drone with the flamers and the heavy bolters. So we'll do the heavy bolters first. And now we'll roll 4d6 for the flamers. So 15 shots from those 2 units coming into the bloat drone. Again, 5s to wound. So 3 wounds, 3 up saves. Makes them all. Okay. So next we'll fire everything from the Exorcist into the Terminators over just in front of that penitent engine, see if we can do anything there again. So we'll do 3 shots for the heavy bolter, 2 hits, force to wound, 1 wound. I get to re-roll. No, not going to use that one yet, which she saves. So 3d3 for the missiles. Okay, so 3, 5, 6. Hit on 3s. So even with the Argent Shroud reroll, I only have 1 come through. Excellent. Which does wound. That's something. Which is saved. Excellent. So let's go for the Hunter Killer. Okay, so we're going to fire everything from the squad that's got transhuman into the Blight Haulers, which is a lot of dice. Okay, they count as double shots, and they're within half range, so that's 4 shots each for each of those sisters. So after all of that, there was 9 wounds inflicted, so fingers crossed he fails them all. Fails a number, takes 5 wounds. And so with that, that marks the end of the shooting phase for the sisters, and so we'll move on to the charge phase. I'm going to spend a CP on the chaplain or the priest to give +1 attack to the Repentia. But charge-wise, the only thing that's going to really be charging are the penitent engines, 1 there into the bloat drone and 1 there into the Terminators, and then the Repentia into the squad of Plague Marines there. So the penitent engines both got in, so we just need to roll for the Repentia. So here we go. On a 7, they make it in. Okay, so we'll start with the Repentia. The War Hymn went off after the CP was spent, so they get an additional attack. So that's 27 attacks coming in, and this order has the trait of the Passion. So in the first round of combat, 6s also explode, and as the Repentia are zealots, we get to re-roll all hit rolls. So hitting on 4s, 6s exploding. So 19 came through, so now with the +1 to wound from the superior, we're wounding on 2s. That isn't bad at all. So that's 17 come through, so 17 5-ups after Armour of Contempt, each doing 2 damage reduced to 1 damage. And so with only that many saves, we actually kill 6.5 of those Marines, but not the squad, which is interesting. So I'll remove those in a moment before we go on to the penitent engines. So we move on to the penitent engine with the Terminators. So he gets 4 attacks and hitting on 4s, but he's also a zealot, so he gets to re-roll. And that 6 does explode, I believe. So it becomes strength 8 with the buzz blades, toughness 5, so 3s to wound. Get an Argent Shroud reroll. Okay, so 3 go through onto the Terminator's invuln. That was a 2, so 2 failed, so that kills a Terminator. 2 damage each becomes 1 damage each, so that's reduced down to they lose 1 Terminator, 1 wound. And rinse and repeat into the bloat drone, and that 6 explodes, so 4 go through, 3's to wound. Okay, so only one wound, which is failed. So 1 damage goes onto that bloat drone. So the flail has come through, causing 4 wounds to the penitent engine. So 4 5-ups to keep him alive. He takes actually 1 wound. You've got 2 left. So now we'll go in with all the axes and the swords. And after the axes came in, failed the saves and failed the 5-up feel no pains. So that penitent engine falls. So after the bloat drone fought back and put a wound onto the penitent engine, that marks the end of the turn for the Sisters of Battle. Now the only real question is, do I want to spend as a Death Guard player 2 CP to keep that Plague Marine alive? There's every chance I'll get 2 CP back next turn. And it will, he is OBSEC, he is keeping that objective, so I will spend those CP. Let's have just a quick look at objective counts. Looking at the objective count, it won't give me anything in terms of holding more, because the Sisters already hold this one, the rear one, and this one over here. So it will be balanced out because I was on a 6 objective game. So I'm spending 2 CP for no real gain because I don't hold more in the next command phase. So let's roll for his morale. He lost 6. That's 3. He's failed that. So that Marine fails the morale. So the Death Guard are starting to spread out. The Repentia have managed to counter the Plague Marines into the Rhino. So there's still a fair bit going on in this mid-board here. So with a unit of Plague Marines down, but we still have one inside this Rhino, what will Death Guard do for turn 2? So at the end of the movement phase and during the command phase, the tallyman did get his tally off, so he did get an extra CP for the Death Guard. And again, he put his reroll, his +1 on the Death Shroud, because the aim is to try and get him into combat this turn. So we've done a little bit of movement at the back here. We've brought that squad of Plague Marines back, and they're doing the action for retrieving the data terminals. The Poxwalkers spread out a little bit, and the PBC is just shunted back into the corner. The Rhino continued round. It's still got that squad of Plague Marines in it, and the Plague Caster just shuffled forward a little bit, and then the Poxwalkers around here are doing the action for Spread the Sickness onto a second objective, and the Blight Hall has moved into the craters to get a line of sight onto that Rhino and try and pop that. That's pretty much it. So with that, we'll move on to the psychic phase. So the Psyker is going to put Miasma of Pestilence onto the Terminators, which goes off, so they're now -1 to hit. And he's going to do Curse of the Leper onto the Sister Superior. She's the nearest after measuring, so let's see if it goes off, which it does. Okay, there was nobody within 12 to suffer the mortals off of that roll, and likewise for this one, so that's unfortunate, but the way it is. So let's get the dice and do the Curse of the Leper. So 7 dice, and on 4 5s and 6s she'll suffer mortal wounds. For 2. Okay, she survived that, that's not bad. So on to the shooting phase, and we'll start with the Plague Bear's Caller right at the back there, and it's going to go into this Exorcist. So I'll start with a number of shots from the mortar for 4, which isn't bad. Hit on 3s, Oh, not bad. Strength 8, toughness 7, so 3s to wound. Okay, 2 wounds. Makes 1 and takes fails 1, so or does it? Is it -2? No, -2 becomes -1, so absolutely fine. Nothing taken there. So onto the heavy slugger. 3 hits. No wounds. Okay. So working our way round, we'll go from these blight haulers into the rhino. Little point put them onto these because these are still transhuman. So just try and pop that rhino, get it out of the way. So 2 multi-melters, sorry, 4 multi-melters. All hit. 3s to wound. All wound. Oh dear, that is 4 6-up saves. Okay, so it's well dead. Does it blow up? No. So everything from this Terminator squad fired into the sisters and have an absolute whiffer. Only a couple of wounds made and they were saved. So we'll move on to the Rhino. It's going to chance its arm and put everything into that sister superior. So we'll start with the bolter, storm bolter. And does 1 wound, which she saves. Then the Havoc missile launcher for 5. It's 2 wounds, and she's fine. Okay. So the last thing we'll do, the last thing to shoot, will be not the last thing to shoot. We've got the found blight spawn, but the drone will fire into combat for 2d6 shots for 9. So strength 6, toughness 4 now because of contagion, so 3s to wound. Rerolling the 1. Not bad. So 4-up saves. And 5-up feel no pains. Okay, he's got 2 wounds remaining. So the last thing to really shoot is the foul blight spawn. I'm going to put it into this squad of sisters here that are trying to defend the shrine. We've had to spend a CP on overwhelming generosity because he was just out of reach, bringing the death guard down to 3. So let's see how many he gets. And I'll be re-rolling that for viscous death. Okay, better than nothing. So strength 8 and their toughness 3, so it'd be 2s to wound, re-rolling 1s. Okay, so 2 wounds. See how they get on. So -3 becomes -2, but I'm going to take it on these sisters here because, so they get them in cover. It's -1, so 4-ups. And so I lose 1. Okay. So finally, the last thing to shoot actually was the gauntlets from the Death Shroud into the Retributor squad here, causing 8 wounds. So, are any in the crater? No. So that's going to be 3-ups. No. Okay. And that finishes the shooting phase. So now we'll move on to the charge phase, and we're going to charge these Terminators into the sisters. We're going to charge Captain Trips into the Repentia, and we're then going to charge the Death Shroud into the immolator. Okay, I'll get measured up and we'll do some rolling. So I'm going to spend a CP on Overwatch from this immolator here, and I'm going to use a miracle dice out of my pool, which will be a 6. There we go. So that has hit. So the question is, does it wound? Nope. So I use my Argent Shroud reroll. Okay. So, do the Terminators make it in? Yes, they do. Does Captain Trips make it in? Yes, he does. And the Terminators over the other side, it's an auto in, but they get 9, so we'll move that movement round. So, we'll get them all moved in and piled in, and we'll come back for the fight phase. So we'll start over here, and we'll start with the champion who's got the Reaper of Glorious Entropy. So he suffers no minus to hit with his cleaver, so it's hitting on 2s, which all hit. Strength 8, toughness 6, so wounding on 3s, re-rolling 1s. He just doesn't need to. He wants rid of that immolator. So -3 becomes -2, so 5s. A valiant effort, but nothing doing. So does the Rhino blow up? Nearly, but not quite. So moving on to the Lord of Contagion into the Repentia. So see if we can clear that unit down. So we're probably going to do this swipe attack on this occasion. Okay, so 10 attacks, hitting on 2s. Wounding on 2s, re-rolling 1s. And so they get the 6-up Shield of Faith, which saves one of them, and they get a 5-up Feel No Pain, which saves another one of them. So we lose 6 out of the 9. And so finally, moving over to the Terminators into the Sisters. Again, they're transhuman, so it might have an effect, I think. So starting off with the flail. Falls to wound. Oh, okay. And after the reroll, all 4 go through. So 4-ups. Of course. So we lose 4 straight away. Onto the swords. Again, falls to wound. Reroll the 1. Okay. So 5s. And make one fail one. So that's 5 gone, that's half the squad. And now for the axes. Reroll the 1s. Okay, just the 1. And I'm going to use a miracle dice. I'm going to use the 4 out of the pool. Okay, and that also nets the Sisters player 2 victory points for using 2 miracle dice in the opponent's turn. So now, time to fight back. So starting with the Repentia there, there's a couple left. So hitting on 4s, re-rolling, and they're still under the effects until the next command phase of the priest, so they get an extra attack. Okay, that 6 has exploded so far. Okay, so 4 go through, 4 hit. And strength 6, toughness 5, so 3's to wound. So 2 wounds go through. So 2 4 invulnerables. Fails them both. 2 wounds reduced, 2 damage reduced to 1 damage, so he takes 2 wounds. And so the sisters fight back and nothing doing at all. So that will mark the end of the Death Guard. Actually, we've just got to do the attacks with the Penitent Engine. Okay. So 5 attacks, because he's got 2 Buzz Blades. So 5 attacks. Okay. Does wound. And does fail. Okay, does 1 more damage. And then the fight back from the drone. Okay, that was a 3. Don't know what that was, a 1, but it doesn't count. Okay, so 3 wounds. And that Penitent Engine dies. Okay. So at the end of the Death Guard turn, need to sort of work out we've lost 5, so there will be a morale thing here. So let's see how that gets on. I think I will. I've lost 5. So during the morale phase, I have used a 3 to keep this lot here and contest the objective, but we failed morale here, so that will. So I've netted an additional point for Leap of Faith for the sisters, but scored the additional points there for fleeing vectors. And that marks the end of the Death Guard turn, so I'll remove those. That model, she failed the morale, but the last one surviving actually did hold the line. So there's 1 left in combat there with the captain with Order Contagion. So that being done, let's move on to battle round 3 and see how the sisters can work back on the. So that being said, that's the end of the battle round. Let's move on to battle round 3 and see what the sisters do next in order to take the objectives back. So during the command phase and the start of the turn, the Teleman for the Death Guard again gained another additional CP for the Death Guard, and we rolled a 4 for our miracle dice. So at the end of the movement phase, we haven't done anything in terms of the Canoness's miracle ability just yet, but at the end of the movement phase, we've brought the Sacrosancts up and round. We've disembarked with this second squad of Retributors, and just started to see what we can do to sort of fortify this position a bit more, because this is our defend the shrine area, and then see what we can do in order to start pressurising some of the Death Guard lines instead. And the last thing we've done is bring the Seraphim in and see if we can whittle away any of these Poxwalkers, maybe even go for a charge. We'll see. So with that, we also brought the Superior round in an effort to maybe try and tie up this Psyker, or even charge the Psyker and do something there. So with that being said, let's move on to the shooting phase. So we must do something about these Death Shroud that are right in these lines, because otherwise they're going to just be a wrecking ball through this lot. So we have brought the Canoness, the second Canoness through as well. But what we're going to do is put these Retributors first off into the Death Shroud. So now with the Cannoness nearby, they're rerolling ones, but 3s to hit. And they all hit. 3s to wound. And I'll reroll one of those for Argent Shroud. Okay, so 3 wounds go through. So that's 3 4-up inbuns. And there's a lot more shooting to come, so I think I'm going to have to save a CP from the Death Guard because there's a lot more shooting to come. So what is the damage? So let's roll for the damage. That kills a Death Shroud. I'm going to spend the remaining cherub to fire one of the multi-melters again. Both hit. Both wound. And one fails to save again. The damage this time for 4 kills another one. So we'll move on to this battle squad here, the Battle Sister squad, and we're going to put everything into the remaining Death Shroud. So we'll start with the Flamer for 3 shots. 2 wounds. Really? I'll use this. I will use the CP at this point. It's fine. So it takes a wound. Okay, so I'll move on for the Paladin. We just rolled for the Stormbolter, and we managed to get 4 wounds through. So let's see what we can do. And he's absolutely fine. Okay, so now we'll go on to the bolter shots. So the 7 remaining bolter shots come in. And after some reroll 1s, we've got to do some wounds. Reroll those 2 1s for the Palatine. So 4 wounds come through. So 4 2-up saves. It makes them all. So the Cannoness with her plasma pistol hits, wounds. Oh, he fails the save. Okay, so it's down to 1 wound remaining. So we're going to put the 2 heavy flamers into him. See what we can do there. Not a lot, I don't think. No, nothing. So the last bit for the Retributor squad, I think we'll put the heavy bolter and the melter into him as well. So the heavy bolter. Heavy bolter. Reroll the 1s for the Palatine. Okay. 2 saves to make. He fails it. That's his last wound. Okay, and the melter just fires into the ground. Oh. Just out of interest, what would it have done? I would have missed with 1. I would have failed to wound anyway. So it took an awful lot. It took a lot of firepower there. A lot of anti-tank stuff to bring those Death Shroud down, but they did, which is pretty significant, I think. Yes, could be significant. So now we'll put everything from the Sacrosancts into the Bloat Drone. So that's 9 pistol shots. Rerolling the 1s. Fives to wound. Reroll 1 for Palatine. No. So 1 wound, which he saves. Okay, so take a shot for the Palatine into the bloke drone, which hits, which wounds, which is failed, so it does another damage, does another wound of damage. The shots rang out from these, the Superior and the Priest, into the Plague Marine squad, but nothing doing, no wounds taken there. So the last thing left to shoot is going to be the Exorcist. Scratch that. There's also the Seraphim over here. So the Seraphim shot into the Poxwalkers here, doing very little, but they did manage to kill one. So now the Exorcist, and we're going to put everything into the bloke drone, try and soften it up. So we'll start with the heavy bolters. No, actually, we're going to put everything into these blight haulers here. They need dealing with. So we'll start with the heavy bolters. 3 hits, 5 to wound, and she saves. So now the missile launchers. Okay, so 3, 5, 7. Hitting on 3s. Yeah, I use an Argent Shroud. Okay. Wounding on 3s. Okay. So -2 becomes -1. So 4 ups. Which one fails? D6 damage. For 3 becomes 2. So leaves this hauler with 2 remaining. Okay, so that marks the end of the shooting phase. So now we'll move on to the charge phase. So a couple of charges to declare. The Superior and the Priest are going to try and get into the Psyker, and then this whole blob here is going straight for the bloke drone. So spending a CP on Overwatch from the Death Guard into the Sacrosancts for 9. So strength 6, toughness 2 now, so 2s to wound, re-rolling 1s. Okay, so 8 go through. So you get +1 to their armour save, which is what this will be on, so it'll be 2s. And we lose 2 on the way in. Okay. So what do they roll? They roll a 7. Okay. Okay, it leaves a 6 for the Canoness to get in. And she gets in on the 7. And it's a 6 to get the Superior in and a 7 to get the Priest in. So we'll start with the Superior. Oh, she's very mad. Then the Priest. Okay, he is equally as mad. And then we'll roll for the Seraphim to get into the Poxwalkers. Oof. They fail that charge. And so we'll spend a CP to see if I can get those Seraphim in. No. Okay. Okay. So on to the fight phase. Spending my last CP on exceptional proficiency for the Sacrosancts and just adds 1 to their attack roll, so they're hitting on 2s. So hitting on 2s, re-rolling 1s and 6s exploding for that first round of combat for the Sacrosancts. Okay, so 3 exploding. So strength 6, toughness 7, so 5 to wound here, which will be the kicker. After re-rolling the ones from the paladin, we managed to get 6 through. So -3 becomes -2, so it's on the 5 up invulnerable save anyway. See how we get on. It takes 3 wounds. And so the sergeant. Reroll that one. Okay, so 4 hits from 3 attacks, not bad. And same thing, 5s to wound. Reroll that one. Okay. So 2 wounds on the 5 up invuln. Okay, another one goes through, so you've got 3 remaining. So now we'll go with the Canoness. So she gets 4 attacks, and because of the righteous rage that she's got, she re-rolls the hits and she re-rolls the wounds. So she's hitting on 2s, and 1 explodes. She's now wounding on 5s, and gets to re-roll. Okay, so she has 2 wounds in there with the Blessed Blade. And both fail. So between them, the Scry-Salvage and the Canoness, they failed to kill the bloke drone. It's got 1 wound remaining, which is a shame. But that's how it goes. So now we go into the Repentive Superior, into the Playcaster. So she gets 5 attacks. 5 attacks. Hitting on 3s. And 1 explodes. So that's excellent. Strength user, so 5s to wound. Nothing. Okay. I gets to reroll 1 for Argent Shroud. Oh, we get 1 through. Okay, -2 becomes -1. And the caster is fine. So now it's on to the priest. So he gets 3 attacks. 2 hit. No wounds. Okay. So now we get to fight back. So we'll start over with the Playcaster, who gets 4 attacks hitting on 3s. And they all hit. Wounding on 2s because of contagion and the strength of the staff. Rerolling 1s. Oof. These are all into the superior. Okay, so she gets 4 3-up saves. And she takes a wound. Okay, so she's down to 1 wound remaining. So now the bloke drone into the Scry-Salvage. Yeah. 3 hits. 3 wounds. And 3 saves. Okay, excellent. So the only things left to fight now are going to be the defenders fight first. So we're going to go with the Lord of Contagion. So 5 attacks, all hit. All wound. She has her Shield of Faith. Okay. That's just... Yeah, she's dead. So the sisters fought back here, doing absolutely no wounds. So now we'll go on to the Terminators, hitting the sisters. And we'll start off with the flail. Okay, 3 hits, 2s to wound. Reroll those 1s for plague weapon. Okay. Okay, only 1 falls. Not bad. And from the axes. those ones. Okay. And 2 more fall. And then the swords. Leaving one. Leaving one. Okay, so we don't want to. I could spend a miracle dice, but I don't think I'm going to. I think I'm going to try and roll for it. For the morale of that sister, which she's lost 4, she's rolled a 4, she's leadership 8, she's fine. And so that marks the end of the sisters' turn 3, and so not bad. I think they've held the line around this fortified objective here, and we're looking to make further fortifications into this objective here in further turns. But let's see what happens with the Death Guard. Turn 3. Okay, so here we are at the end of the Death Guard movement phase. The command phase, the Tallyman got another CP. He's been absolutely amazing this game. He's got a CP every single turn so far. That's really, really great. You can see why he's an auto include at the moment. Let alone the sort of +1 to hit on units that he selects. Really, really good. Really good. So we've brought the Tallyman and the Blightspawn forward. So they're within range to start making use of their own auras, just in case. We've stayed in combat with the Psyker, but the blob of melee marines have disengaged from or disembarked from the Rhino. The Rhino has advanced back into this table quarter. The Poxwalkers have both started to make moves towards the Seraphim. So I've got 2 options for charges there, and a couple of options for what I want to do. We've moved it around with the Blight Haulers, and the drone fell back out of combat. If it can survive stuff that's been thrown at it, depending on what's left for the sisters turn 4, then I'm starting to look to get as many units into the table quarters as I can for the despoiled ground secondary. So I'm starting to make those moves as a Death Guard player into that sort of turn 3, turn 4, turn 5. So let's see what we can do. So that being said, we'll head on to Psychic. So we'll start with a smite into the Sister Superior, which goes off and kills her. And then we'll do Curse of the Leper into the Priest, which also goes off. And he's well dead too. And into the pool goes a 6 for a character dying. So with that, we'll go on to shooting. So we'll start with the Blightspawn into the sisters, into the Sacrosancts. So I'll go for the number of shots. I'm not re-rolling that. So strength 8, toughness 2 right now, so 2's to wound. We roll that 1. Okay, and on to their 4 up invulnerable. Lose 3 straight away. Now I'm going to go on to the Plague Burst Crawler, putting everything it can reach with into the Exorcist missile launcher. So we'll start with the heavy slugger. 5 to wound, 1 wound. It takes a wound, so we'll mark that one up. And then number of shots from the mortar for 4. Okay. We're going to spend a CP on the splash damage version. So hitting on 3s. Wounding on 3s, rerolling 1s. Okay. And 1 goes through for 3 damage. So a total of 4 taken. So all the bolter shots from the Plague Marine squad came in, managing to actually do 1 wound, which it failed. So now we'll go on to the plasma. Which we're going to overcharge. Because why not? I'm going to... well, do you know what? I don't have to spend this. I don't feel like I need to keep him alive, if I'm honest. It wounds. So, after all that, he died for nothing, but still. Okay, the last bit of shooting really is going to come from these 2 blight haulers into the Exorcist. So, want to whittle it down as much as we can, so that it's an easier target. I'm going to use that Exorcist if I can to do a little bit of extra movement for that Plague Marine squad. So we'll start with tracer crack missiles. Wounds. And it fails. Okay. Okay. So D6 damage for 2, I'll wear that. Okay, so we're up to 7 wounds on that Exorcist. Now the melters, they all hit. Three wounds. Okay. 6 up Shield of Faith. Oof, none of them. Okay, so 3d6 damage. And that is 1 dead Exorcist. Does it blow up? Oh, no, it doesn't. Okay, that's shooting pretty much done. So we're going to head on to the charge phase. There's only 2 to do. No, sorry, 3 with the Poxwalker. So both Poxwalker units are going to go into the Seraphim, and then the Lord of Contagion, Captain Trips, is going to go into this squad here. So we're going to set to defend with this squad of Sacrosancts, and we'll just roll for a look for Captain Trips now. Just don't roll the 2. No, he's definitely in. Okay, so I'll measure up the Poxwalkers and we'll roll for those. Okay, so the squad that have been at the deployment zone have got a 6 and they fail. And the squad that's been in... and the squad that... Yeah, I think I'll leave that. The squad that's been in the... that's moved its way out of the deployment zone need a 5. And they're in. So I'll move those in and get started with combat. So we'll start with Captain Trips. We want to trigger the 4-up invuln, so we're going to go for the cleave option. Everything's going to go into the Sacrosancts, and I'll save the Canoness for later. In fact, what we'll do. yeah, we're going to go into the Sacrosancts because I want to remove that bodyguard aspect from the Canoness, as well as reduce the number of models that have got the invulns. It'll all become clear when it comes to the sisters phase. Okay, so hitting on 3s. Oh. Wounding on 2s, rerolling 1s. So 2 on the 4 pin button. So 1 model slain. That's not great. So spending a CP on Mutant Strain for the Poxwalkers into the Seraphim. So any 6s do mortal wounds, and any 1s kill me. There we go. So Strength 3 versus Toughness 2, so 3s to wound. Ooh, that's not bad. So 4 wounds, no AP, so 4 3-up saves. So to get this clear, so 3 mortal wounds in addition, so we've lost 4, okay, and the Poxwalkers have lost 4, unless I roll 4 6s. So yes, so the Poxwalkers have lost 4, and they've lost 4. Okay. So now we come back to ongoing combat. So this mega brave sister, she is going to put her attacks into the Death Guard. Blight Lords both hit. Woo! 1 wound. And they're fine. So now the Blight Lords get to fight back. So we'll start with the flail, hitting on 3s. It's not bad. Running on 2s. Equally not bad. Right, so I am going to do something. I'm going to spend... Right, so 5 wounds. So I'm going to spend a CP. I'm going to spend a miracle dice, sorry, on one of them. I'll roll for the other 4. Come on, 4 4s. How hard can it be? Quite hard. She's well dead. So the Sacrosancts lost 4 this turn. Leadership 9. So just don't roll very high, please. Please, please, please. No, they're fine. I'm going to use a second miracle dice for the morale of the Seraphim to keep her around. So that's 2 miracle dice used this turn. So we'll get a couple of points from the sister's point of view for Leap of Faith. So that's not too bad. But that being said, that is the end of turn 3, and the Death Guard are really starting to make headway across the board now. This whole side here, this whole area of the board is now in possession of the Death Guard. The sisters being hemmed in, but let's see what they can do. Let's see what points they can score and see how much... Oh, before we do that, we haven't fought back with the Sacrosancts. We'll start with the 2 Sacrosancts. They're hitting on 2s now because they're set to defend. And we're rolling 1s because of the Canoness. Excellent. And the 6 does explode because although the Blight Spawn has turned off if they charged, it doesn't affect or shouldn't affect if they've been charged. So all 4 come in. Oof. So 4 wounds on the 4-up invuln. Which he loses 3. Excellent. Now for the Sister Superior. We roll those 1s into a 1. 2 wounds. Ouch. Okay. That's him gone. He had 4 wounds remaining. So the Warlord has fallen. There you go, everybody. There you go. So now that marks the end of the round. I did the Seraphim combat off camera. She killed 2 on her own. and then I'd have done the morale, which obviously use the miracle dice for. So apologies for being slightly out of sequence, but you kind of get the gist of what's going on. So now the sisters are going to be in an interesting position. I think turn 4 and turn 5 might be about denying the end of game points for Death Guard, if we can, because they're currently on, the despoiled ground stuff is scored at the end of the game, and there's every chance to get a lot. So it might be about more of denial and gaining points than trying to outscore the opponent at this point. So that being said, let's move on to to Sisters, turn 4. Okay, so the Sisters have finished moving. In the command phase, the Canoness popped her miracle aura off, so 6 to wound will do mortal wounds in addition for melee. The way that this Seraphim, the way that I've taken the models away as Sisters and the way the models had to be taken away as Poxwalkers meant that she was no longer in combat, so she's zipped across here and she's doing the action over here for Sacred Ground on that objective there. These Sisters have stayed still, but I'm debating whether it's worth popping the 2 CP on them being the defenders of the faith and giving them transhuman, which I think I'm going to do. And then this Emanator's moved across to sort of again do some blocking if they can. The squad of Retributors has moved across, and then the squad of 2 have moved into their place to defend the shrine. So I'll have a quick think about this Defenders of the Faith stratagem and see whether I think it's worth it, and then after that we'll go on to the shooting phase. So I did pop the strategy in the end, because looking at turn 4 for the Death Guard, these Blightlord Terminators are only currently about 11 inches away. So once the movement comes in, once the charge comes in, I think having that 4 up transhuman is going to make a difference. So that being said, let's move on to the shooting phase. So we're going to start with these 2 Retributors, and they're going into the Foul Blight Spore. So hitting on 3s, rerolling 1s because of the Canoness nearby. Okay, so 3 hits. 3s to wound. Excellent. -4 becomes -3, so 3 6s. Only makes 1. Is it worth a CP? Yeah, why not? I've got 5 left. Nope. Okay, so 2d6 damage plus 2 because they're in half range. So he's well dead, but what would he have? Ooh, that's is he though? So that's 3. So that's reduced to 1. 6 wounds. Yeah, he's dead. So now we're going to put the plasma pistol from the Palatine into the Tallyman. So she hits. She wounds. And he doesn't save. So that's 1 wound taken on the Tallyman. So now I'll have a think about where we're going to put some split fire. So we're going to start with this. Actually, we're going to put everything from this squad here, Defenders of the Faith, into the Bloat Drone. And there's a melter gun inside that squad. So we'll start with the melter gun, which hits, which wounds, and isn't saved. I've used the CP already, so Does he explode? No. So that bloat drone is just melted into nothingness. And all the other shots from the sisters just ring out and hit the armoured containers where that bloat drone was. So we're going to put the heavy flamer into the Tallyman and the heavy bolter into the Tallyman, and then the 2 melters are going to go into this Plague Marine squad. Do our best to whittle it down. So the heavy flamer for 3 shots. So 3's to wound. That's not bad. And he takes another wound, leaving him with 2 remaining. So the heavy bolter, all 3 hit. Heavy bolter, and I get to strength 5, toughness 5, so all 3 wound. And he's fine. He takes it on the chin. Okay. So the 2 melters are going to fire into the Plague Marines. So hitting on 3s. And okay. Argent, and then wounding on 3s. An Argent Shroud reroll. Okay. So 3 6-up saves. Again, save 1. So the first one. Okay. So after all that, I don't think we're in half range. I'll check. So I'll spend the Cherub to fire again. So hitting on 3s. Reroll. Rerolling 1s for the Canoness. So 1 hit. And doesn't. We reroll 1s for the Palatine. It does wound. Doesn't save. And this definitely kills 1 this time. So it kills 2 from that squad. So heavy flamers from the Immolator going into Plague Marines. Okay, a bit underwhelming. 3's to wound. Get to reroll 1 for Argent Shroud. Okay. So 3, 6, 8 wounds. 3, 6. So 8 wounds. So, drop dice don't count apparently. Ooh. So the last thing to fire, we fired all the pistols and bolters from the Canoness and the Sacrosancts into the Plague Marines, but nothing doing. So the last thing to fire is going to be the Canoness into the Tallyman. She may as well overcharge. Well, no, she may as well not actually, because it's only going to be damage 1 if it goes through. So hitting on 2s. That's the end of that one. Excellent, cool story. Right, with that we'll move on to the charge phase. A couple of things to declare on this one. I think we need to start pushing out as an army. So you can go because I used you. We're going to go with the Sacrosancts and the Canoness into the Plague Marines, and then we're going to try and push towards this Tallyman as well, and then try and, as best we can, to prevent the Death Guard getting into 3 quarters. But I think it's going to be a really, really hard job. I think it's going to be pretty much guaranteed for them, but let's see what we can do. Certainly over this side, I think we can start to push back this flank and sort of spin the battlefield somewhat. So let's see what we can do. So I spent a miracle dice on the Canoness just to ensure she got in, and then rolled the charges, and we got a 7 for the Sacrosancts. The Palatine was super angry with a 12, and then the Retributors with an 11. So everyone's made it in, and we've just daisy chained this a little bit to make sure we're holding this objective again still. But we're going to start over there. with the Sacrosancts into the Plague Marines. So I'm spending my last CP on exceptional proficiency, so they hit on 2s. So we're hitting on 2s, looking for 6s. Hitting on 2s, re-rolling 1s because of the Canoness, and looking for 6s to explode. Okay, so 1 exploding 6. It's not too bad. So 5 attacks out of 4 for the 2 Sacrosancts before the superior hits. So strength 6 against toughness 5. So 3s to wound, but again we're looking for 6s to do mortal wounds in addition because of the Righteous Rage miraculous ability. So I've done 1 mortal wound, and we'll re-roll a Argent Shroud. Another mortal wound. So it's killed 1 in addition, and we have 3 wounds to roll to save for the Plague Marines. So 3 5-ups. Okay. So kills 1 and kills 2 with the mortal wounds. Now for the Sister Superior. All hit and explode. Again, 3s to wound, 6s mortal wounds. Okay, so 1 wound, which is saved. Now for the Canoness, she gets to re-roll everything, both wounds and hits. It's a good job. Okay, so not so great. Okay, so -3 becomes -2. We've done a mortal wound anyway, so 5-ups, and each failed one is a dead Marine. Okay, so it's 1, 2, 3, and a bit. And so with all the wounds coming through from the Canoness, 2 had already been lost. She's killed 1, she's killed 2, she's killed 3 and a bit. And that is the Plague Marine squad. So we'll start with onto the Tallyman. We'll start with the Palatine, and again she hits on 2s, and we're looking for 6s exploding. Okay, so with the power sword, she's strength 4, toughness 5, so 5s to wound, and we'll re-roll for that, so no wounds going through. Moving swiftly on. So we'll start with the Retributor Superior with the power maul, and they explode, so she both hit. Strength 6, toughness 5, so 3s to wound, and both wound. And he's fine. -1 becomes -0, and he is fine. And the rest of the attacks came in from the Retributors that could fit, and yeah, there you go. So Tallyman wants to strike into the Palatine, so 4 attacks hitting on 3s, all hit. Wounding on 2s, strength 4, toughness 2. All 4 go through. She takes 3 wounds. Excellent. So that's the end of the Sister's turn 4. Not bad, really. I think pretty successful, and managed to really clear that threatening blob of Plague Marines. There is another threatening blob, which is the Terminators. But both sides, assets are getting pretty thin on the ground now. So we've defended the shrine once again. We're actually middle doing sacred ground both here and down there. I off camera realised that I can do it in 2 objectives. So I'll put the whatever she's called, I can't remember now, words escape me. But anyway, she's doing that Imagifier. That's it, got it, Imagifier. And that one down there. So give me a bit of redundancy on that. This sister squad is still under the effects of transhuman for another turn until their next movement phase. So let's see what the Death Guard can do. They've got a little bit of catching up to do now, because they will only be on 2 objectives. It's on they won't control this objective, so they're only getting the whole 2. So let's see what the Death Guard can do in this later stages. On the Death Guard, turn 4. So we've finished the Death Guard movement phase, and we've brought the Blight Haulers round to this flank. We've brought the Terminators through into the building, lining up for a charge. We've brought the player caster forward towards the Canoness and the Sacrosancts, and then everything's the Rhino and the Plague Poxwalkers are starting to home in on this lone sister here, try and stop her from doing that action. Not much else moved. The Plague Burst Caller has moved, just a bit of repositioning, but that's pretty much it. So let's go on to the Death Guard Psychic phase. So the nearest unit is actually the Canoness. So we're going to cast a Smite into her and probably Curse of the Leper. Just try and get rid of her and the buffs that she gives. Start off with a Smite, which goes off. So she suffers 1 mortal wound anyway, and suffers a further 3, so that's 4 mortal wounds. She has 1 wound remaining, so let's move on to Curse of the Leper, which also goes off, and that kills her. Okay, so the way I'm going to play this, because that result there would actually kill the Canoness. So I have a decision to make. Do I play that in such a way that it's killed the Canoness and Curse of the Leper goes on to the nearest closest unit, which would be the Sacrosancts? Well, the psychic power was declared against the Canoness because she at the time was the closest. So I'm going to save that pestilential fallout to go against one of the Sacrosancts, and then I'll roll 7 d6 to see if I can get above the toughness of the Canoness. So she's toughness 2 right now because of contagion, so it will be 3s, 4s, 5s and 6s. So yeah, she's definitely dead, and then that also then kills from the pestilential fallout one of the Sacrosancts. Anybody knows any different or would have played it different, please let me know in the comments below. So moving on to the shooting phase, we're going to start with the Blight Haulers and we're going to split fire. Technically that Blight Hauler cannot see the immolator, so he's going to go into the sister that's in the building here doing the action, and this Blight Hauler is going to go into the immolator. So we'll start with the crack missile, which misses. So we'll then start with the multi-melter, going on to the multi-melter, sorry, and 1 hits. Does a wound, which is not saved. So for D6, it's for 4. Okay. And then crack missile into the sister, which hits, which wounds. She saves, excellent. And 2 melters. Both hit, both wound. Okay. Okay. No, she's gone. So we'll fire the Plague Burst Caller into the immolator. I'm going to start with a heavy slugger, 2 hits, no wounds. And then the number of shots from the mortar. I may as well spend a CP for 4. all 4 hit. 3 wounds. And I'm going to... So I'm going to use a miracle dice from the pool, which means I've used one this in my opponent's turn, and I lose the other one, so it does 2 more damage. So the shots came in from the Rhino into the Sacrosancts into the mid-board and doing no damage. So we'll move on to the Terminator squad firing into this squad of sisters. Now they are transhuman, so we're going to split fire. We're going to do the 2 bolters from the front there into this squad, and then the heavy weapon and the other bolter into the Sacrosancts. And after the bolter fire rang out from the Reaper cannon and the Storm bolter, the Sacrosancts fell. Then the Storm bolters rained in on the sisters and managed to kill one in cover. So that marks the end of the shooting phase. Successfully denying the sisters this action over here, but then and also clearing those Sacrosancts and the Canoness in the midboard. So now we're going to go on to charges. There's only really one charge that's being made, and that's the Terminators into the sisters. So it's a 5-inch charge into those sisters, and the sisters are going to spend their last remaining CP on Overwatch. So we will start with the Melter, and I'm going to spend a miracle dice in this charge phase for it hitting. So I just need to roll to wound, which it wounds, and we're onto a 4-pin run for the Terminator squad, which they fail. I'm going to spend a CP in this phase. Ooh, no, in case I fail it. No, I'm not. Okay. So I'm going to roll the damage. And that kills a Blightlord on the way in. That could be pretty crucial. As they were still under the effect of the transhuman and doubling up the number of bolt shots, I did the rest of the rolls off camera, resulting in 2 hits and 2 wounds, but they saved it on a 3 and a 5, so no problem. So, do the Terminators get it in after that? Do they get into combat after all of that? No, so I'm going to spend that CP. Oh, God! Still no. That was... So, that marks the end. Oh, no, it doesn't. We've got to go for the into the fight phase now. And it will be defenders fighting first. So we'll start with the Palatine, who gets 3 attacks into the Tallyman. So hitting on 2s. No exploding 6s this time because it's a second round of combat. Okay. 5s to wound now. So what I'll do is I will spend another miracle dice to wound on that 5 and roll another. Okay, so 1 wound, which he fails to save. So with some CP left, I'm going to re-roll that. Still fails. Okay, so it takes 1 damage. So he has 1 remaining. So he's going to fight back now into the Palatine. So 4 attacks hitting on 3s. Wounding on 2s. And she fails the save. So Palatine falls. Enraged at seeing her sister, the Palatine, dragged down in front of her, the sister superior raises the power maul and hits on 3s. Both hits. Wounds on 3s. Okay. And now the rest of the sisters. They're in combat. Fight. 3 hits. 1 wound. And he fails the wound. Fails the save. And that drags the tallyman down. So that now marks the end of the Death Guard turn, and that failed charge there is pretty clutch actually. So let's see what the sisters can do in turn 5. They've got a chunk of work to do, even though they are ahead on the points right now. There's still a lot that this Death Guard army can do, especially with things like despoiled ground. If we can work those units into the right areas, then there's a lot of points at the end of the game that are up for grabs by the Death Guard. So let's see what the sisters can do in turn 5. So during the command phase and the start of the turn, I rolled a 4 for the miracle dice, and obviously gained a CP, and so did the Death Guard. So now at the end of the movement phase, started to try and just do a little bit of blocking and bringing the Retributor's firepower to bear. So we moved the Emulator forward to try and movement block these Death Guard. We brought the Retributors and the other Retributors forward to split fire a little bit against the Plaguecaster and into the Terminators. And then we've moved this squad of sisters back into the building, so if any Terminators do survive, then it just lengthens their charge for when the Death Guard need to get into their to do their work. So that's the movement phase complete. Obviously no psychic, so straight on to shooting. So we'll start with some tracer fire from the heavy bolter into the Plaguecaster. So hitting on 3s. So 2 hits, wounding on 4s, 1 wound, which he saves. And now for the heavy flamer, for 1, which doesn't wound anyway. Okay, so now we're going to fire both multi-melters into the Terminator squad. And 3 hits. And 2 wounds. So 2 4-up invulns. Ooh. Right, I'm going to spend a CP on 1, which works. So they are in half range. So yeah, that kills 1. So we'll use the cherubim. Excellent. So removing the actual champion from that Death Guard Blightlord Terminator squad has meant that these 2 melters at the back here can't fire into them, so it changes their target, and we're going to fire into the Plaguecaster. I've measured, I can see no part that I've used the sort of 1 mil rule, and both can actually see him without crossing over the footprint of those ruins. So let's go for those melters then. 3 hits, 3 wounds, he fails 2 of them. So reduced to 1, reduced to 5. That's a dead Plaguecaster. So now rolling for the Immolator. I think we're going to put everything into the Terminators. I want to prevent that OBSEC unit getting anywhere near my lines, my hammer objective. So 4d6. So strength 6 versus toughness 5. So 3's to wound. So 15 2-up saves. And 1 is down to 1 wound. So at the end of the Death Guard movement phase, during the command phase we gained a CP, and the sisters actually gained a 2 for their miracle dice. So we brought the Blight Haulers right into the deployment zone. Again, we're working our way for that despoiled ground, which is possibly going to be tough, but we will have units in 1, 2, 3 quarters, so we'll see. So now the objective really is to try and see if we can get as many off of this objective as we possibly can. It's going to be difficult because whatever units I remove from here for the Death Guard, it's going to elongate that charge. So I'm going to have some decisions to make in the charge phase as to whether I just slingshot around the immolator and use the movement that way to get myself onto the objective, depending on how many from here I manage to whittle away. So that's really the objective, is to see what we can do. Ideally, it would be great if I could get these into combat and get some fleeing vectors points. That's going to be the next clutch thing. So I've got to be really careful as to how I actually, what I fire at. Okay, so we're going to start with the Plague Burst Caller, and everything's going to go into the immolator, I think. Just try and soften it up a little bit. So we'll start with the heavy bolters, or the heavy slugger, sorry. 2 hits. Still 5s to wound, and no wounds. So number of shots from the mortar for 4. Hit on 3s. Wounding on 3s. Okay, reroll all of those. It's a plague weapon. That's better. So I'm going to spend 1 miracle dice, and I'm going to spend 2 more. Okay, so it takes 2 damage, bringing it down to 4 wounds remaining. Okay, so we've made a decision. We are gonna have to put as many of all of this lot into those and whittle as many of those down as we can, and run the risk of an extended charge. So we'll start with 2 frag missiles. 10's not bad. So 3's to hit. 2's to wound. So we're in cover, so no AP, so 2's to save. Okay. 4 melters. 2's to wound. So -4 becomes -3 and becomes another +1 to the cover save, so 5s. Oh. So it's in half range, so they only lose 1. So the Blight Lord Terminator's shot out into the Retributor squad, managing to kill 1. So now, that all being done, we're on to the charge phase. There's really only 1 charge to make. It's going to be the Blight Lords into the Sisters. Depending on how we get on, I might even charge these Blight Haulers in, but for now, they're safe on that despoiled ground anyway. So, it's a 9-inch charge for the Blight Lords to get into those Sisters. Do we make it? No. I'm going to have to spend a CP. Change the dice. Oh, no. Okay. So on that marks the end of the Death Guard turn. There's nothing more they can do. We are wholly in the deployment zone and also our own deployment zones. That gets us 3 points for despoiled ground. We're in 3 table quarters by more than 6 inches. That's another for despoiled ground, and we control half or more. We've got 1 there, 1 here, and 1 here under the rhino. So we do control. So that's 9 points for despoiled ground at the end of the game. So that's the end of the game, and it's a win to the sisters, mainly on secondaries. Not getting these Blight Lords onto this objective at the end was pretty key. Else I'd have equalled the sisters on primary, and then underperforming on the secondaries somewhat. It wasn't too bad, but fleeing vectors certainly spread the sickness. It could have possibly been better, but and could have been done maybe on there. But I didn't want to lose a Terminator squad for a turn essentially. But as it happened, maybe that wouldn't have been such a thing. That would have got me sort of 2/3 of those primaries on that, on the secondaries on that. Sorry. Ultimately, there's 13 points in it, so I could have got an additional 4 from getting the Blight Lords onto that. If I'd have pushed more to here and taken out this squad, or the units here, and made it so the sisters weren't controlling this, that would have denied them 3, and a couple of other bits in terms of secondaries, and it would have been a bit closer. On the whole, having sisters as Argent Shroud, being able to kind of zip around and still shoot, I knew it was going to be a hard game for the Death Guard because of their sort of slow moving stuff. That's why I was sort of looking to put the Blight Haulers in and the drone in to try and get some stuff up the board. I think, holding 2, holding 3, it was an interesting mission to play, because currently I've been only really playing hold 1, hold 2. So if this was a 5 objective mission, obviously it would have been playing slightly, it would have played out differently, and I think the Death Guard would have had much more opportunity to bully the sisters off the objectives. But interesting. We'll take that into the next game. But as a whole, the Death Guard, the netting over 70 points. I got sort of 40 out of 40 or 37 out of 45, so near where I wanted to be with the Death Guard in terms of the primary, and trying not to, or consciously not trying to overscore it like I did in the last game when I played with them. I really majorly overscored on the primary, or would have done. So, in that respect, was an interesting game, but it's chalked up as a sisters win. It's were the Death Guard all knocked up to experience, and we'll move on to the next game. So sincerely hope you enjoyed yourselves, and sincerely hope you enjoyed the game, and we'll see you on the next one.